Two priests on the patio, pull up a chair and watch the show. If there's anything you want to know, just ask. Two priests on the patio, yeah.
Hello, my name is Jeff Ward. I am the priest at St. Cuthbert's Anglican Church in Southeast Oakville.
I'm Sue Ann Ward. I am the priest at Grace Anglican Church in Waterdown.
And just so you know, our dog Lucy is with us today. Today we want to continue our series, the top 10 reasons why some people are allergic to church. Today we're going to be talking about about Christians who behave badly. And why that's true, and the impact it has on people, and maybe why people are allergic to church because of that. To start, Sue Ann's going to read from us a couple of passages of Scripture, one from Matthew's Gospel and one from John's Gospel.
All right, so this is Matthew chapter 7, beginning at verse 1 to verse 5. Do not judge, so that you may not be judged. For with the judgment you make, you will be judged, and the measure you give will be the measure you get. Why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eye, but do not notice the log in your own eye? Or, how can you say to your neighbor, let me take the speck out of your eye, while the log is in your own eye? You hypocrite! First, take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye. The second passage is from John's Gospel, chapter 13, verses 34 and 35. And Jesus said to his disciples, I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. The Gospel of Christ.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. So, just to be clear, we didn't read those passages because we were trying to say that people who judge bad behavior should not be judging. It's more about the fact that it reflects some of the bad behavior that Christians have demonstrated towards other people. I just want to read a quote from C.S. Lewis to start. When we Christians behave badly or fail to behave well, we are making Christianity unbelievable to the outside world. I also thought I'd throw this joke in because I've heard this joke many times, and maybe you have as well. When asked why someone didn't want to join the church, they said, because the church is full of hypocrites. And of course, the response to that is, yes, why not join us? There's room for one more. It's a reminder to us that as Christian people, we are still people. The church is made up of people. That means that it's always going to have failings. That means it's always going to be imperfect. Because even if we say that we are followers of Christ, even if we're baptized believers and disciples, we're still going to be human, which means we're still going to mess up. So behaving badly is going to happen. What we are hopeful as followers, as people who listen to the teachings of Jesus, try to follow the teachings of Jesus, and try to emulate his behavior, that we will behave better than we would if we didn't do those things. And so these two passages that Sue Ann read for us today, one being this idea that often as church people, we have said and done things that judge the rest of the world instead of maybe being self-reflective. And the second passage was what Jesus truly commanded of us if we are followers and disciples, and that is to love one another first and foremost, and to do that in the way that he loved everyone else. That's a tall order. We know that, right? I mean, he gave his life for everyone. But we are still expected to do our best to keep behaving better and better, like raising that bar of our own behavior.
And Jesus not only said that we have to love one another, he made it even harder on us. He said we have to forgive one another. And not just forgive somebody once or maybe twice or maybe 3 strikes and you're out. We are supposed to forgive each other 70 times 7 times. That's another way of saying an infinite number of times. So we have to love people and we have to forgive people. And that is a very, very tall order for us human beings with all of the foibles that we have. We're just not perfect.
And then he goes one step further, which is the kind of test that all of us feel really pressed to pass, and that is to love even our enemies. It gives you the gulp factor, right? It's hard enough sometimes for me to love the people who I'm supposed to love, my family, my friends, people in my church, etc. But I'm supposed to love even my enemies as myself, and I'm supposed to love myself fully. You know, there's all kinds of things that the church has done as a church, as an institution throughout history. We're not going to go through all those things today. There just isn't time for all those things today. But there are many examples where the church just hasn't behaved well towards other people. And the easy way for us to measure that is that we can see that the church wasn't expressing love for people. And I know many of you have seen things, and some of them are more sensational because they're, you know, in the news, in the press, on social media. But our experience is that for most people, when they really get turned off from the church, it's because of some action, something that's happened to them personally with somebody who's also a Christian. So whether you are a Christian or not, you encounter someone who says they are, who professes to be, and somehow, some way, you are hurt by them, or you just see their behavior and think, oh man, if that's what it means being a Christian, I don't think I want to do that. And that was why I quoted the joke at the beginning about the hypocrites, because yes, I think we should expect people who call themselves Christians to behave well, to do their best to show that love that Jesus calls for. But we also, as Sue Ann said, have to give each other some grace, which is to say, I forgive you, right? Work toward healing with each other. Having said that, it can be very hard to do when someone is cruel or someone, you know, is extreme in their behavior towards somebody. Let's face it, how many of us haven't said something like, you know, stop preaching to me, or, you know, you're behaving holier than thou. And the whole idea of that is that, you know, you think you're above me or you're judging me. And that really is why that passage from Matthew is a challenge to us, to not be those people who are out there judging others and judging the world, and meanwhile us not living up to that either.
Mm-hmm. And this is not a new thing. If you read Paul's first letter to the church in Corinth in our New Testament scriptures, you will see that a lot of that letter is devoted to him chewing out the parishioners at that church in Corinth for their poor behavior, for all kinds of big and small misbehaviors and not interacting with people appropriately. You know, some people coming to communion, which at that time was an agape meal, a feast, a full meal, not just a small piece of bread or wafer. But some people coming and eating and drinking and making merry, while others are still at work and not waiting for their fellow parishioners to come and join the party. So Paul had quite a bit to say about that. It seems to me, though, that sometimes it's the small little things that people do that put other people off. You know, I've had people tell me, I came to the church and I went to sit down and I was told I couldn't sit there because so-and-so always sits there.
Which was particularly bad when people actually paid for their seats, yes.
And that seems like a small thing, but it's a big thing when somebody gets up the courage to cross the threshold and try to worship with a new church community for the first time. And that little rejection can just feel crushing when that's your first impression of what is supposed to be a loving and welcoming community where we read on the sign, you know, all are welcome. And it doesn't always feel that way. And sometimes we feel like all are welcome,
except me and right now and in this place.
And the church is saying, yeah, all are welcome, but only if you're like us.
Right. Yes. Yeah, and you say what we say and say it the way we say it. Yes. And I know some people who have also gotten up the courage to come to a new community and join and go to a fellowship time, a coffee hour, and hear people gossiping about other people. And their first thought is, oh my gosh, they could be talking about me next. And so we often don't think about these little things. And so one of the things that I think is important for us is to check our own behavior, like to try to reflect on our own behaviors, often, and try to correct it when we think that we're not showing that love. But also take the risk and take that opportunity to find someone around you trust and who loves you, and ask them to let you know when they see things about your behavior that maybe could put people off or cause people to question whether you're really, a follower, a disciple, someone who's trying to embrace the teachings of Jesus. Because it's so important and so helpful for us to know that someone whose conscience we truly, appreciate and trust can help us to try to stay on track. Because we're all going to fall off at some point. We're all going to fail. We're all going to make mistakes. And sometimes we don't see them ourselves.
I have to say, though, as much as there are times when I'm frustrated by the behavior of some of my fellow Christians, sometimes I watch the news and I think, how can they even call themselves Christians? The Christians that I have met, the Christians that I know, the Christians in my parish are good people, are people who are making a difference in this world, are people who are trying their best, and we all slip up, and hopefully we catch each other when we do, and we write each other and we help each other, just as Jesus did. There are numerous examples in our scriptures of people making really poor decisions, treating others not lovingly. But Jesus restores them to their right state and restores them to their loving community through his gentle example, through his patience and kindness, and sometimes through his challenges. I'm reminded of one time when one of my children said to me, the nicest people that I've met in life, I met through the church. And, I love it when there's those moments in life where my kids have those kinds of realizations. And, just recently, I had an experience with some folks through our food bank at Grace Church, where people were reaching out and helping each other, and really forming a community amongst some of the neighbors that were coming seeking food. And when I provided some assistance, there was this response about, that's what we expect from the church. We expect your goodness, we expect your compassion and your help, and we're grateful for it. And that really meant a lot. So,
We're going to recognize that people do behave badly who call themselves Christians, but that our hope is that most people you encounter when you're part of a Christian community will be a positive experience, and that all of us have to do our best to behave well as often as we possibly can, and do that, as Jesus says, by loving each other the way he loved us. So next week we're going to continue this series of the top 10 reasons why some people are allergic to the church. But in the meantime, please stay safe, take care of yourself, be healthy, and take care of one another.
And lots of love from us to you, and love from Lucy too. May God bless you.
God bless you.